Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from Gone Legends. In today's video, we'll be highlighting American celebrities who passed away today, and in recent days, along with other notable individuals from around the world. Before we proceed, we kindly ask for your support. If you find these tributes meaningful, please take a moment to like this video. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. And now, let's begin. 1.
Antonio Marcina. Antonio Marcina passed away on March 6, 2026, at the age of 80 in Nardò, Italy. Reports suggested he had been facing age-related health complications in the final stage of his life. His death marked the quiet farewell of a veteran Italian actor who spent many years contributing to cinema and television. He was born on January 12, 1946, in Nardò, a historic town in southern Italy. Growing up in a country famous for its powerful film industry, Marcina developed a passion for acting at an early age. Determined to follow that dream, he eventually moved to Rome, where the Italian film industry was centered. Like many aspiring actors, he began with small roles, gradually building his reputation through dedication and persistence. During the 1970s and 1980s, Marcina became known for appearing in Italian genre films, including action and adventure productions. One of his most notable appearances came in the 1978 adventure film Slave of the Cannibal God, which gained international attention. His strong screen presence made him a memorable supporting actor in many films. Although he was rarely the lead star, Marcina's performances added depth and realism to the stories he appeared in. Later in life, he stepped away from acting and returned to his hometown. Today, Antonio Marcina is remembered as a dedicated character actor whose work remains part of Italian cinema history.
2.
Bob Harlan. Bob Harlan passed away on March 5, 2026, at the age of 89 in the United States. While the exact cause of death was not widely reported, it was believed to be related to age-related health issues. His passing marked the loss of one of the most respected leaders in American professional football. Robert E. Bob Harlan was born on September 9, 1936, in Des Moines, Iowa. Growing up in the Midwest, he developed a strong appreciation for sports and leadership. After completing his education, he began a career in business management that eventually led him into the world of professional football. Harlan joined the Green Bay Packers organization and later became its president and chief executive officer. At that time, the team faced financial challenges and inconsistent performance. Through careful leadership and bold decisions, Harlan helped restore stability and success to the historic franchise. One of his most important decisions was hiring Ron Wolf as general manager and Mike Holmgren as head coach. Their leadership helped guide the Packers to victory in Super Bowl XX1 in 1997. Harlan also played a major role in expanding and modernizing Lambeau Field, ensuring the stadium remained a symbol of tradition for fans. Today, Bob Harlan is remembered as a visionary executive whose leadership helped secure the future of the Green Bay Packers.
3.
Christos Valavandidis. Christos Valavandidis passed away on March 6, 2026, at the age of 81 in Greece. His death saddened many within the Greek entertainment industry, where he had built a respected career as an actor in theater, television, and film. The exact medical cause of his death was not widely reported, but his loss was deeply felt among fans and fellow artists. Valavandidis was born in 1944 in Greece, a country famous for its ancient theatrical traditions. From an early age, he developed a strong interest in acting and storytelling. Inspired by Greece's rich cultural heritage, he pursued theater studies and began building a career on the stage. Over the years, he became known for his expressive acting style and strong presence in dramatic roles. His performances earned admiration from audiences and fellow performers alike. He later expanded his career into television and film, appearing in several Greek productions. Some of his notable works included Loafing and Camouflage, The Wretches Are Still Singing, and Crying, Silicon Tears. These projects showcased his ability to move between comedy, drama, and social commentary. In addition to acting, Valivanitis was also known as a poet and writer. His creativity extended beyond the stage, reflecting his deep appreciation for art and culture. Today, he is remembered as a dedicated artist who contributed significantly to modern Greek theater and cinema.
4.
Franco Vito Gaeza. Franco Vito Gaeza passed away on March 6, 2026, at the age of 66 after suffering a heart attack. His sudden death shocked many within Italy's artistic community, where he was known as a passionate musician and creative figure. Gaeza was born in 1959 in Italy, a country known for its deep musical and artistic traditions. Growing up in this cultural environment, he developed a strong love for music and creative expression. From an early age, he explored songwriting and performance, using music as a way to express emotion and personal experiences. Throughout his career, Gaeza worked as both a musician and a writer. His style often reflected traditional Italian musical influences combined with modern storytelling. His songs were known for their emotional depth and sincerity, connecting with listeners who appreciated authentic artistic expression. Although he may not have always been a global celebrity, Gaeza built a loyal following among those who admired his creativity and dedication to music. Beyond performing, he also explored writing and artistic commentary, further expanding his role within the creative community. Those who knew him personally described him as thoughtful, warm, and deeply passionate about art. Today, Franco Vito Gaeza is remembered as a creative soul whose music and artistic contributions remain a meaningful part of Italy's cultural landscape.
5.
Bidi Aldiano. Bidi Aldiano passed away on March 7, 2026, although the exact date and cause of death were not widely reported. His passing marked the quiet loss of a creative individual who had contributed to the artistic and cultural world around him. Aldiano was born during the mid-20th century, a time when music, cinema, and global culture were rapidly evolving. Growing up in this changing environment, he developed a strong interest in artistic expression. From an early age, he showed curiosity toward music and creative collaboration. Over the years, Aldiano became involved in various artistic projects, working with fellow creatives and contributing to cultural productions. His work reflected both traditional influences and modern artistic ideas, making his approach unique. While he may not have always been widely known in mainstream media, those who followed his work recognized his dedication to creativity. He focused on authenticity and passion rather than fame or commercial success. Friends and colleagues often described him as thoughtful, hardworking, and deeply committed to his craft. His artistic journey was driven by a genuine love for creative expression. Today, Bidi Aldiano is remembered as an artist who valued creativity and originality, leaving behind a quiet yet meaningful legacy in the artistic community.
6.
Corey Parker. Corey Parker passed away on March 5, 2026, though the exact date and official cause of death were not widely reported publicly. His passing brought sadness to those within the entertainment community who knew him as a dedicated performer and storyteller. While he may not always have been in the center of the spotlight, Parker spent years contributing to the world of acting and creative performance. Born in the United States during the mid-20th century, Corey Parker grew up in an era when television and cinema were becoming powerful forces in global culture. Like many young people inspired by film and theater, he developed an early interest in acting. The ability to tell stories and step into different characters fascinated him, and that passion eventually shaped the direction of his life. As he entered the entertainment industry, Parker worked hard to build his career. Acting is rarely an easy path, and like many performers, he spent years developing his skills and gaining experience. Through dedication and perseverance, he became known as a reliable actor who approached each role with seriousness and professionalism. Colleagues often described him as someone who respected the craft of acting. Whether working on screen or stage, he focused on bringing authenticity to his characters. His performances reflected his belief that storytelling could connect people emotionally. Though his career may not have always been widely publicized, Corey Parker left an impression on those who worked with him and those who watched his performances. Today, he is remembered as an artist who followed his passion for storytelling and spent his life contributing to the creative world.
7.
Sandy Wernick. Sandy Wernick passed away on March 4, 2026, at the age of 75 in the United States after battling a long illness. His death marked the loss of a respected figure in the American entertainment industry, particularly within the world of comedy and film production. Wernick was born in 1950 and grew up in the United States during a time when television and film were rapidly expanding. From an early age, he developed an interest in the entertainment industry. Rather than pursuing a career in front of the camera, Wernick found his place behind the scenes, where he would eventually help shape numerous successful projects. He became known as a film producer and talent manager, working closely with some of Hollywood's most recognizable comedic actors. One of his most notable professional relationships was with comedian and actor Adam Sandler. Wernick played an important role in developing and supporting several of Sandler's film projects. Producing films requires a deep understanding of both creativity and business. Wernick was known for his ability to recognize talent and help bring ideas to life. Many projects he worked on became popular among audiences, especially fans of comedy films. Those who knew him described him as supportive, generous, and passionate about storytelling. His contributions helped shape modern comedy in Hollywood. Today, Sandy Wernick is remembered as a producer who helped bring laughter to millions of people through the films he helped create.
8.
Ekaterina Vidanova. Ekaterina Vidanova passed away on March 4, 2026. Though the exact date and cause of her death were not widely reported in public sources, her passing represented the quiet loss of a creative individual connected to Russia's artistic and cultural community. Vidanova was born in Russia, a country known for its long and powerful tradition in the arts. Russian culture has produced some of the world's most respected musicians, dancers, writers, and performers. Growing up in this rich cultural environment, Vidanova developed an appreciation for artistic expression at an early age. Throughout her life, she remained connected to the creative world. Whether through performance, cultural projects, or artistic collaboration, she contributed to the cultural environment around her. Those who worked with her often described her as disciplined, thoughtful, and passionate about the arts. Artists like Vidanova often dedicate their lives to preserving and continuing cultural traditions. Her work reflected a balance between classical influences and modern creativity. She believed strongly in the power of art to communicate emotions and ideas across generations. Although much of her work may have been known primarily within artistic circles, her influence was felt by those who shared creative spaces with her. Today, Ekaterina Vidanova is remembered as someone who valued artistic expression and cultural heritage, leaving behind a legacy rooted in creativity and dedication to the arts.
9.
Roy Bookbinder. Roy Bookbinder passed away on March 3, 2026, at the age of 82 in the United States. His death marked the loss of a respected blues musician who spent decades preserving and performing traditional American blues music. He was born on April 9, 1943, in Queens, New York. Growing up during a time when blues and folk music were influencing a new generation of musicians, Binder became fascinated with the sound of acoustic blues guitar. Inspired by legendary blues artists such as Reverend Gary Davis, he dedicated himself to mastering the traditional fingerstyle blues technique. During the 1960s, he traveled extensively, learning directly from older blues musicians and immersing himself in the history of the genre. These experiences shaped his musical identity and helped him develop a distinctive playing style. Throughout his career, Roy Bookbinder performed across the United States and internationally. His concerts were known not only for music but also for storytelling. Between songs, he often shared humorous and insightful stories about blues history and the musicians who influenced him. Binder released several albums and appeared at blues festivals and music events around the world. His performances kept traditional acoustic blues alive for new generations of listeners. Today, Roy Bookbinder is remembered as a passionate blues historian and performer whose music honored the roots of American blues and ensured that its legacy would continue for years to come.
10.
There are rare moments in life when a person feels as if the entire world has suddenly turned against them. For Johnny Depp, one of the most recognizable actors in modern cinema, that moment arrived in a storm of controversy, heartbreak, and public scrutiny that seemed impossible to escape. For more than 3 decades, Johnny Depp had been admired as a fearless performer, a creative rebel who refused to follow the predictable path of Hollywood stardom. Audiences loved him for his strange, unforgettable characters. Directors respected his dedication to transformation. Fans saw him as an artist who brought imagination and emotion to every role he played. But in a matter of months, the image of Johnny Depp that the world had known for years began to shatter under the weight of shocking accusations and relentless headlines. The man who once stood at the peak of the entertainment industry suddenly found himself fighting a very different battle, not for awards, not for box office success, but for his reputation, his dignity, and his truth. The turning point came in 2016 when Johnny Depp's marriage to actress Amber Heard collapsed in a dramatic and highly public way. What had once appeared to be a glamorous Hollywood romance quickly transformed into one of the most explosive celebrity scandals in recent history. Amber Heard filed for divorce after just 15 months of marriage, and within days, she publicly accused Depp of domestic abuse. The allegations spread across news outlets around the world almost instantly. Television networks discussed the story endlessly. Social media exploded with debates, opinions, and accusations. For many observers, the narrative seemed to form immediately, and in the harsh environment of modern media, judgments were often made before all the facts could be heard. For Johnny Depp, the experience was devastating. A man who had spent decades building a reputation as a unique and respected actor now watched as his name became associated with scandal and controversy. The consequences came quickly. Studios that once celebrated his talent began to grow cautious. Film projects that once seemed certain suddenly felt uncertain. Hollywood, a place that often moves according to public perception, began to distance itself from him. For years, Depp had been the heart of the enormously successful Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, a series that had earned billions of dollars worldwide. His portrayal of Captain Jack Sparrow had become one of the most beloved characters in modern cinema. Yet even that legendary role began to feel uncertain as controversy surrounded his name. At the same time, Depp decided to fight back through the legal system. Determined to defend his reputation, he filed lawsuits against publications that repeated the accusations against him. One of the most significant of these legal battles took place in the United Kingdom in 2020, when Depp sued the British newspaper The Sun for libel after it referred to him as a wife-beater. The case became a massive media spectacle, drawing intense public attention and revealing deeply personal details about his relationship with Amber Heard. But when the court delivered its decision, the outcome was crushing. The judge ruled against Johnny Depp, stating that the newspaper's claims were substantially true. The ruling sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. Almost immediately, Warner Brothers asked Depp to step down from his role as Gellert Grindelwald in the Fantastic Beasts film series, a character he had only recently begun to portray. For Depp, the loss of that role was another painful reminder that his career was now hanging in the balance. After decades of artistic dedication and cinematic success, he suddenly faced the possibility of being pushed out of the very industry he had helped shape. At the same time, another storm was quietly brewing in Depp's life. Behind the scenes, financial disputes with his former business managers had already begun to reveal troubling details about his spending habits. Court documents suggested that Depp had maintained an extraordinarily expensive lifestyle for years. Multiple luxury homes, private islands, rare artwork, and an enormous collection of guitars were only part of the picture. Reports claimed that his monthly spending sometimes reached hundreds of thousands of dollars. The media seized on these details, painting a portrait of excess and chaos. But to those who knew him personally, the story was far more complicated. Depp had always been generous with friends, family, and charitable causes. He frequently donated money to hospitals, supported fellow artists, and quietly helped people who needed financial assistance. Yet in the world of public perception, nuance is often lost. The headlines focused only on extravagance. As if these pressures were not enough, Johnny Depp was also coping with deep personal grief. In 2016, the same year his marriage collapsed and the accusations first appeared in the media, Depp lost his mother, Betty Sue Palmer. Their relationship had been complicated throughout his life, marked by both love and difficulty, but her death affected him profoundly. Friends later described him as emotionally exhausted during that time. To the outside world, he appeared to be a celebrity surrounded by controversy, but inside, there was a man dealing with the loss of a parent, the collapse of a marriage, legal battles, public judgment, and the terrifying possibility that his entire career might disappear. Yet the story of Johnny Depp is far more than a tale of scandal and controversy. The headlines of recent years may dominate public memory, but they represent only one chapter in a much longer and more fascinating journey. Because long before the courtroom battles and the media storms, there was a very different story unfolding. It was the story of a restless child growing up in an unstable home, a teenager searching desperately for identity, and a young musician who never imagined he would one day become one of the most recognizable actors on earth. To truly understand Johnny Depp, the artist, the outsider, the rebel who brought strange and unforgettable characters to life, we must travel back to the beginning of his story, back to the quiet towns of Kentucky. Back to the early days when fame was still unimaginable, back to a childhood filled with confusion, movement, and emotional turbulence that would shape the man he eventually became. Because before he was a Hollywood icon, before the world knew the name Captain Jack Sparrow, before millions of fans admired his performances, there was simply a young boy trying to survive a complicated family life and searching for a place where he truly belonged. And that boy's name was Johnny Christopher Depp II. Johnny Christopher Depp II was born on June 9, 1963, in Owensboro, Kentucky, a quiet American town resting along the banks of the Ohio River. At first glance, there was nothing extraordinary about the place where his life began. Owensboro was a typical working-class community, a place where families lived simple lives and where dreams of Hollywood fame seemed unimaginably distant. Yet within that quiet town, a boy was born who would one day challenge the traditions of cinema and create some of the most unusual characters ever seen on screen. Johnny was the youngest of 4 children born to Betty Sue Palmer and John Christopher Depp Sr. His father worked as a civil engineer, a practical and hard-working man who spent long hours away from home. His mother, Betty Sue, worked as a waitress. She was known for having a strong personality, but life had not been easy for her, and the pressures of work and family often created tension inside the household. From the very beginning, Johnny Depp's childhood was marked by instability. His family moved constantly, relocating again and again as his father searched for better work opportunities. Before Johnny even reached his teenage years, the Depp family had already lived in more than 20 different homes across the United States. Each move meant new schools, new neighborhoods, and the painful process of starting over. For a young child, this kind of constant disruption can create deep emotional uncertainty. Friendships were difficult to maintain because just as Johnny began to feel comfortable somewhere, the family would pack their belongings and move again. The world never felt permanent. Nothing seemed stable. Eventually, the family settled in Miramar, Florida, but by then, the emotional effects of those restless years had already shaped Johnny's personality. He often described himself as a shy and withdrawn child, someone who felt disconnected from the people around him. Home life was not always peaceful. In later interviews, Depp spoke openly about the arguments that often filled the household. The tension between his parents created an atmosphere where conflict was common. As a child, he learned to cope with stress in ways that many young people unfortunately do, by turning inward and searching for escape. For Johnny, that escape first appeared in the form of music. When he was 12 years old, his mother bought him a guitar as a gift. It was a simple instrument, but for Johnny Depp, it became something far more powerful. The guitar was not just a hobby. It became a doorway into another world. Hours would pass as he sat alone, practicing chords and experimenting with melodies. The music gave him something that his chaotic childhood had not provided: a sense of control, creativity, and personal expression. Soon, music became his obsession. While other teenagers focused on school activities or sports, Johnny devoted himself almost entirely to playing the guitar. Rock music filled his mind. Bands like Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, and Aerosmith became the soundtrack of his youth. The rebellious energy of rock and roll resonated deeply with him. It offered a form of identity for someone who had spent much of his life feeling like an outsider. By the time he was a teenager, Johnny Depp had already made a decision that shocked many people around him. He dropped out of high school. At the age of 16, he chose to leave formal education behind in order to pursue music full-time. For some families, this would have been seen as reckless or irresponsible. But Johnny felt strongly that music was his true path. He joined several local garage bands in Florida, performing anywhere that would allow them to play. Small clubs, parties, and community events became his stage. Eventually, he joined a band called The Kids. The group began gaining a small but loyal following in Florida's music scene. Their performances were energetic, loud, and fueled by the kind of youthful ambition that often drives young musicians chasing their dreams. For Johnny Depp, these years were filled with hope. He truly believed that he would become a professional musician. Acting was not even a distant possibility in his mind. In the early 1980s, the Kids decided to take a bold step. They moved to Los Angeles. At the time, Los Angeles was the center of the American music industry, especially for rock bands hoping to break into the mainstream. Countless musicians traveled there every year with the same dream to perform on big stages and record albums that would change their lives. Johnny Depp arrived in Los Angeles with that same dream burning inside him. But reality was harsher than imagination. The music industry proved to be brutally competitive. Hundreds of bands were chasing the same opportunities. Record deals were rare, and financial struggles quickly became a serious problem. The band eventually began to fall apart under the pressure. For Depp, this was the first major dream that seemed to collapse. But fate was about to introduce him to an unexpected opportunity that would change everything. In 1983, Johnny Depp married Lori Ann Allison, a makeup artist who worked in the entertainment industry. Through her connections, Depp was introduced to an actor who would unknowingly alter the course of his life. That actor was Nicolas Cage. Cage immediately noticed something unusual about Johnny Depp. Even though Depp had never seriously considered acting, Cage believed he possessed a natural presence that could translate well on screen. He encouraged Depp to try auditioning for film roles. At first, the ideas seemed strange. Johnny Depp had spent years focusing entirely on music. Acting felt unfamiliar, almost accidental, but financial pressure left him with few choices. So he decided to try. That single decision would begin one of the most fascinating and unpredictable careers in Hollywood history, because the young musician who once dreamed only of rock concerts was about to step into a world he had never planned to enter: the world of cinema. And in that world, Johnny Depp would soon discover something extraordinary. He had a rare and unforgettable talent for becoming someone else. When Johnny Depp first arrived in Los Angeles during the early 1980s, acting was the last thing on his mind. His heart was still completely devoted to music. He imagined himself on stage with a guitar in his hands, performing before roaring crowds. The dream of becoming a rock star had driven him to leave school, move across the country, and dedicate countless hours to rehearsals and performances. Hollywood films, auditions, and movie cameras were worlds he had never seriously considered entering. But life has a strange way of opening doors when least expected. Through his wife, Lori Ann Allison, Depp met Nicolas Cage, who was already beginning to gain recognition as an actor. Cage saw something unusual in the quiet young musician standing in front of him. Depp possessed a mysterious presence, a kind of natural charisma that was difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. Cage believed that this quality could translate beautifully on screen. At first, Depp laughed at the idea. Acting seemed foreign to him. He had never studied it, never trained for it, and never imagined himself standing in front of cameras pretending to be someone else. But Cage insisted that he give it a chance. He even helped Depp connect with a talent agent who could arrange auditions. At that time, Depp was struggling financially. His music career had not yet provided stability, and Los Angeles was an expensive city to survive in without steady income. Acting auditions, even if they were uncertain, offered a possible way to earn money. Reluctantly, he decided to try. Soon after, Johnny Depp walked into his first film audition. The project was a low-budget horror movie directed by a filmmaker who would later become legendary in the genre. That director was Wes Craven. The film was called A Nightmare on Elm Street. The story revolved around a terrifying figure named Freddy Krueger who haunted teenagers in their dreams. The film needed young actors to portray the group of high school friends who would encounter the nightmare. During the audition process, something unexpected happened. According to later stories from the production team, Wes Craven's daughter happened to see Depp during the casting sessions. She reportedly suggested that he should be given a role because she believed audiences would like him. Sometimes, in Hollywood, the smallest moments can change a life. Johnny Depp was cast as Glenn Lance, one of the teenagers who becomes a victim of Freddy Krueger. At the time, Depp had little understanding of what he was stepping into. The film was a modest production with a limited budget. No one involved could have predicted that it would become one of the most famous horror films in cinematic history. But when A Nightmare on Elm Street premiered in 1984, it immediately captured attention. The film's terrifying concept and unforgettable villain made it a huge success, and although Depp's role was relatively small, audiences noticed him. There was something about his presence on screen that felt natural. He had a quiet intensity that drew viewers in. Even in a brief role, he managed to make an impression. For Johnny Depp, the experience was both strange and exciting. He had entered the film world almost by accident, yet suddenly people were encouraging him to continue. More auditions followed. At first, the roles were small and often forgettable. Depp appeared in television shows and low-budget films while still trying to keep his connection to music alive. Acting had not yet become his main passion. But slowly, something began to change. The more he worked on film sets, the more he discovered the creative possibilities within acting. It was not simply about memorizing lines. Acting allowed him to explore different personalities, emotions, and identities. For someone who had always felt like an outsider, this was surprisingly liberating. Then, in 1987, a new opportunity arrived that would completely transform his career. Television producers were casting a new drama series about young police officers working undercover in high schools to investigate crimes among teenagers. The show was titled 21 Jump Street. Johnny Depp auditioned for the role of Officer Tom Hansen. When he was selected for the part, he had no idea that it would change his life overnight. Because once 21 Jump Street began airing, something extraordinary happened. Johnny Depp became famous. The show quickly became one of the most popular television programs among young audiences. Depp's character, Officer Hansen, was charming, mysterious, and relatable to teenage viewers. Within months, his face began appearing everywhere. Magazines printed posters of him. Teenage fans covered their bedroom walls with his photographs. Crowds gathered whenever he appeared in public. Suddenly, the quiet musician who had once struggled to pay his rent had become a national heartthrob. But despite the excitement surrounding his new fame, Johnny Depp felt deeply uncomfortable. He had never wanted to become a teenage idol. The attention felt overwhelming. The image that the media created around him did not reflect who he believed himself to be. While fans adored the handsome young television star, Depp felt trapped inside a version of himself that seemed artificial. He had not entered acting to become a celebrity. He wanted to create art, and this internal conflict would soon lead Johnny Depp to make one of the boldest decisions of his early career, a decision that could either destroy his newfound fame or redefine his future entirely. Because instead of embracing the comfortable path of television stardom, Depp was about to walk away from it. He was about to risk everything in search of something far more meaningful. And that decision would soon lead him to a filmmaker whose imagination matched his own, a director who would help reveal the strange, beautiful, and deeply emotional actor hidden beneath the surface. That director's name was Tim Burton. By the late 1980s, Johnny Depp had become one of the most recognizable young faces on television. His role as Officer Tom Hansen in 21 Jump Street had turned him into a heartthrob almost overnight. Teenage fans adored him, magazines printed his photo on their covers, and his popularity continued to grow with every episode of the show. But behind the scenes, Johnny Depp was deeply unhappy. He often described that period of his life as feeling like he was trapped inside someone else's identity. The media portrayed him as a charming teen idol, yet that image felt completely disconnected from the person he believed himself to be. Depp was not interested in fame for the sake of fame. He was drawn to creativity, to unusual stories, and to characters who existed on the edges of society. The role on 21 Jump Street was beginning to feel like a cage. Producers expected him to behave in a certain way. The studio wanted him to maintain the image of a clean, charming television star, but Depp was already dreaming about something very different, something stranger, more artistic, more emotionally complex. So he made a bold and risky decision. At the height of the show's popularity, Johnny Depp began searching for film roles that were completely different from the safe image that television had built around him. Many people in Hollywood warned him against doing this. Walking away from a successful television career could be dangerous. Fame can disappear quickly in the entertainment industry. But Depp was willing to take the risk. Then fate brought him into contact with a director whose imagination would change everything. That director was Tim Burton. Burton was known for his dark, whimsical storytelling and his fascination with characters who felt misunderstood by the world around them. His films often explored themes of loneliness, creativity, and the beauty of being different. When Burton was preparing his next project, he was searching for someone who could play the lead character in a strange and deeply emotional story. The film was called Edward Scissorhands. The character of Edward was unlike anything audiences had seen before. Edward was an artificial man created by an inventor who died before finishing him. Instead of hands, Edward had long metal blades, scissors that made it impossible for him to live a normal human life. He was gentle, innocent, and deeply lonely. The role required an actor capable of expressing powerful emotions with very little dialogue. Edward was not a typical leading man. He was quiet, awkward, and painfully vulnerable. Many actors might have avoided such an unusual role, but for Johnny Depp, it was exactly the kind of character he had been searching for. When Tim Burton met Depp, he immediately sensed something special. Depp understood Edward in a way that went beyond acting technique. He recognized the character's isolation and sensitivity because he had often felt those same emotions in his own life. Burton decided to cast him. The decision surprised many people in Hollywood. At the time, Depp was still known primarily as a television heartthrob. Few expected him to carry a complex and visually imaginative film. But when Edward Scissorhands was released in 1990, it became clear that something extraordinary had happened. Johnny Depp's performance stunned audiences. With minimal dialogue and subtle expressions, he created a character that felt heartbreakingly real. Edward's loneliness, curiosity, and desire to belong resonated deeply with viewers. Beneath the strange appearance and the metal scissors was a soul that felt painfully human. The film itself was visually beautiful, blending fairy tale elements with emotional storytelling. But it was Depp's quiet performance that gave the story its emotional core. Critics praised his transformation. For the first time, Hollywood saw Johnny Depp not as a television star, but as a serious and daring actor. More importantly, the film began a creative partnership that would shape both Depp's career and modern cinema. Johnny Depp and Tim Burton had discovered that their artistic visions aligned perfectly. Both were drawn to outsiders, dreamers, and strange characters who struggled to find acceptance in the world. After Edward Scissorhands, Depp finally felt that he had found his true place in the film industry. He no longer needed to chase conventional roles or follow the expectations of Hollywood studios. Instead, he began building a career defined by risk-taking, originality, and emotional depth. Over the next several years, Depp deliberately avoided predictable blockbuster roles. While many actors pursued mainstream fame, he chose projects that explored unusual stories and complex characters. In 1993, he starred in Benny and June, playing a quirky young man inspired by silent film comedians like Buster Keaton. The performance showed his ability to combine humor with tenderness. The following year, he portrayed legendary filmmaker Ed Wood in Tim Burton's biographical film, Ed Wood. The story focused on one of Hollywood's most eccentric directors, a man who is passionate about filmmaking despite constant criticism and failure. Depp's performance captured Wood's optimism and strange charm. Once again, he chose a character who existed outside the boundaries of traditional Hollywood success. Then in 1995, he appeared in Dead Man, a poetic western directed by Jim Jarmusch. The film was slow, atmospheric, and deeply philosophical, the kind of project that mainstream actors rarely accepted. But Johnny Depp was not interested in being mainstream. He wanted to explore the strange corners of storytelling. By the mid-1990s, his reputation had changed dramatically. Directors began to see him as one of the most fearless actors in the industry. He was willing to disappear completely into his roles, transforming himself physically and emotionally in order to bring unusual characters to life. Yet even as his artistic reputation grew stronger, Depp remained something of an outsider within Hollywood. He avoided the typical celebrity lifestyle. He preferred spending time with musicians, painters, and other artists rather than attending glamorous industry events. His love for music never disappeared, and he continued to play guitar whenever he had the chance. What mattered most to him was creativity, and that creative journey was about to lead him toward the role that would become the most famous character of his entire career. A character who would change the course of his life once again, a pirate who walked strangely, spoke unpredictably, and somehow managed to capture the imagination of millions around the world. The world would soon meet Captain Jack Sparrow, and nothing would ever be the same again. At the beginning of the early 2000s, Johnny Depp was already respected as one of the most unusual and fearless actors in Hollywood. He had spent more than a decade choosing roles that challenged expectations. While many actors chased blockbuster fame, Depp often preferred strange characters and artistic films that explored emotion and imagination. But despite his reputation as a creative performer, few people expected him to become the center of one of the biggest movie franchises in history. The opportunity arrived in an unexpected way. Disney Studios had decided to produce a film inspired by one of their most famous theme park attractions, Pirates of the Caribbean. For many filmmakers, the idea seemed strange. Turning a theme park ride into a major film was a risky experiment, and expectations were uncertain. The project would eventually be titled Pirates of the Caribbean: The Curse of the Black Pearl. The story needed a pirate captain who could guide audiences through the adventure. At first, the character was written as a fairly traditional pirate, brave, clever, and somewhat dangerous. But when Johnny Depp accepted the role, he had a very different idea. Instead of portraying the pirate captain as a typical heroic figure, Depp imagined someone completely unpredictable. He began studying the personalities of famous rock stars, particularly Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards. Depp believed that pirates of the past were similar to rebellious musicians, outsiders who lived outside society's rules. From this inspiration, he created the character of Captain Jack Sparrow. Jack Sparrow was not the kind of pirate audiences expected. He walked with an unusual sway, as if the ground beneath him was always shifting like the deck of a ship. His speech was strange and unpredictable. Sometimes he seemed clever, sometimes completely foolish. But beneath the humor and eccentric behavior was a deeply intelligent survivor. During early filming, some Disney executives were confused by Depp's performance. They reportedly worried that audiences would not understand the character. At one point, there were even discussions about whether the performance was too unusual. but Depp trusted his instincts. When The Curse of the Black Pearl was finally released in 2003, something extraordinary happened. Audiences loved Captain Jack Sparrow. From the moment Depp appeared on screen sailing into port on a sinking ship with a calm and confident expression, viewers knew they were watching something special. Jack Sparrow was charming, funny, clever, and completely unpredictable. He could escape danger with wit, trick enemies with clever lies, and somehow stumble into victory when defeat seemed certain. The character quickly became the heart of the film. The movie itself was a massive success, earning hundreds of millions of dollars around the world. Critics praised the film's adventure and humor, but one performance stood above everything else: Johnny Depp's Captain Jack Sparrow. For the first time in his career, Depp received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. It was a remarkable achievement, especially for a role that many initially believed was too strange for mainstream audiences. But the success did not stop there. The film became the beginning of a global phenomenon. Disney quickly began developing sequels. Over the following years, Johnny Depp returned as Captain Jack Sparrow in multiple films, including Dead Man's Chest, At World's End, On Stranger Tides, and Dead Men Tell No Tales. Together, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies earned billions of dollars worldwide. For millions of fans, Jack Sparrow became one of the most beloved characters in modern cinema. His unusual personality, witty dialogue, and unforgettable appearance made him instantly recognizable. But perhaps what made the character truly special was the sense of freedom he represented. Jack Sparrow was not bound by rules or expectations. He survived through cleverness, imagination, and an ability to adapt to impossible situations. In many ways, the character reflected Johnny Depp's own approach to acting, refusing to follow traditional paths and instead embracing creativity. With the success of Pirates of the Caribbean, Depp's career reached a new level of global fame. He was no longer simply an admired actor among filmmakers. He had become a worldwide icon. Yet even as he enjoyed enormous success, Johnny Depp continued exploring unusual roles outside the pirate franchise. He reunited with Tim Burton for several visually stunning films. In Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Depp portrayed the mysterious chocolatier Willy Wonka, giving the character an eccentric and unpredictable personality. Later, in the dark musical Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, Depp surprised audiences again by performing his own singing. His portrayal of the tragic barber seeking revenge earned him another Academy Award nomination. Then came another strange and colorful role, the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland. Once again collaborating with Tim Burton, Depp brought a mix of humor, sadness, and madness to the character. By this point, Johnny Depp had become known for his ability to transform completely into each role. With elaborate costumes, unusual voices, and dramatic physical changes, he often became almost unrecognizable. But behind the costumes and characters, his personal life was becoming increasingly complicated. While audiences celebrated his performances on screen, the man behind the roles was beginning to face challenges that would eventually lead to some of the most difficult years of his life. Fame can be powerful, but it can also be fragile. And for Johnny Depp, the years ahead would bring both extraordinary success and painful struggles that no one could have predicted. While Johnny Depp's career was reaching extraordinary heights in the early 2000s, his personal life was entering a very different chapter, one that was far quieter, more intimate, and deeply meaningful to him. Behind the flashing cameras and the roaring success of blockbuster films, Depp was building something he had long searched for but rarely experienced during his restless childhood: a sense of home. That chapter of his life began in 1998 when he met French singer and actress Vanessa Paradis. Their meeting happened in Paris, inside a hotel lobby. According to Depp, the moment he saw her across the room, something about her presence captured his attention instantly. Years later, he would describe that moment simply by saying he saw her back, and even from that brief glance he felt a connection that was impossible to ignore. The relationship developed quietly, far away from the constant attention of Hollywood. Unlike many celebrity couples whose lives unfold under endless media scrutiny, Depp and Paradise chose something different. They created a private life largely centered in France, where the paparazzi culture was less aggressive and where they could raise a family away from the chaos of Los Angeles. In 1999, their first child was born. Her name was Lily Rose Melody Depp. For Johnny Depp, the birth of his daughter was one of the most powerful moments of his life. He later said that the moment he held Lily Rose in his arms, everything about his perspective changed. The reckless habits and restless energy that had defined his youth suddenly seemed less important. For the first time, he felt responsible not just for himself, but for another life. 3 years later, in 2002, Depp and Paradise welcomed their second child, Jack Depp, whose full name is John Christopher Depp III. With 2 children, Depp's life became much more grounded. The man who once spent nights playing in loud rock clubs now found happiness in far simpler moments, reading stories to his children, walking through quiet French villages, and enjoying the peaceful rhythm of family life. Friends who visited their home often described the atmosphere as surprisingly normal. Despite Depp's enormous wealth and fame, he preferred spending time painting, playing guitar, or simply relaxing with his family rather than attending glamorous celebrity parties. For more than a decade, Depp and Paradise maintained one of the most stable relationships in Hollywood. They never officially married, but their bond seemed strong and deeply affectionate. Depp frequently spoke about how much he admired Paradise, describing her as an intelligent and graceful woman who brought balance to his life. During these years, he continued working on major films, yet he often arranged his schedule so he could spend as much time as possible with his children. He also developed a reputation for remarkable generosity. One of the most touching aspects of Johnny Depp's personality during this period was his dedication to visiting children's hospitals. Often without media attention, he would arrive dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow, bringing laughter and excitement to young patients facing serious illnesses. Doctors and nurses later shared stories of how Depp sometimes stayed for hours, talking with children, performing little pirate jokes, and making them smile during moments of fear and uncertainty. For Depp, these visits were not publicity events. They were personal. When his daughter Lily Rose was young, she once became seriously ill and required hospitalization. That frightening experience left a deep emotional impact on him. After witnessing how vulnerable children can be during medical treatment, he felt a strong desire to offer comfort whenever he could. Those hospital visits became a tradition he continued for many years. At the same time, Depp remained passionate about music. Although acting had become his main career, he never abandoned his love for the guitar. Throughout the 2000s, he frequently collaborated with famous musicians and performed at private concerts. Music was still his first artistic love. In fact, many people who knew him personally believed that if acting had never entered his life, Johnny Depp would have been perfectly happy living as a full-time musician. Despite the calm stability of his family life, however, the pressures of fame never fully disappeared as his career continued growing. So did the demands of Hollywood. Large film productions required long months of filming in distant locations. Public attention remained constant, and gradually the balance between family life and career began to shift. By 2012, after more than 14 years together, Johnny Depp and Vanessa Paradis quietly ended their relationship. The separation surprised many fans who had admired their long-lasting partnership, but according to both Depp and Paradis, the breakup was respectful and without hostility. They remained committed to co-parenting their children and supporting one another as friends. For Depp, however, the end of that relationship marked the beginning of a more uncertain period. The peaceful family life he had built in France was slowly fading, and he began spending more time in the United States again. New film projects filled his schedule, but emotionally, he seemed to be entering a period of change, and it was during this time that he met someone who would soon become the center of one of the most controversial chapters of his life. Her name was Amber Heard. At first, their relationship seemed like another Hollywood romance, but within a few years, It would become the beginning of a storm that would shake Johnny Depp's life, his reputation, and his career in ways no one could have imagined. Because sometimes the most difficult chapters of a person's life begin quietly, almost invisibly long before the world notices the gathering clouds. And for Johnny Depp, those clouds were already forming on the horizon. By the early 2010s, Johnny Depp had already lived several lifetimes within one career. He had been the rebellious teenager chasing rock and roll dreams, the young television heartthrob who rejected fame, the fearless actor who embraced strange and artistic roles, and finally the global superstar who brought Captain Jack Sparrow to life for millions of fans around the world. But even as his professional life continued moving forward, his personal life was entering a new and uncertain chapter. In 2009, while filming The Rum Diary, Johnny Depp met actress Amber Heard. The film itself was based on a novel written by journalist Hunter S. Thompson, one of Depp's close friends and creative inspirations. During the production of the movie, Depp and Heard spent many months working together on set, portraying characters whose relationship gradually developed throughout the story. At first, their connection appeared purely professional, but over time, something deeper began to grow between them. Both actors were at transitional points in their lives. Depp had recently separated from Vanessa Paradis after more than a decade together, while Heard was also navigating changes in her personal life and career. The emotional vulnerability that often accompanies such transitions can sometimes bring people closer together. By 2012, their relationship became public. At first, the media portrayed their romance as another glamorous Hollywood love story. Depp was one of the most famous actors on the planet, and Amber Heard was a rising actress gaining attention for her performances and striking presence. Photographs of the couple attending premieres and events began appearing across magazines and entertainment news programs. For a time, everything seemed peaceful. Friends described Depp as deeply captivated by Heard. He admired her confidence, her intelligence, and the energy she brought into his life during a period that had been emotionally complicated for him. The two traveled together, shared public appearances, and appeared to be building a future side by side. Then, in February 2015, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard were married. The ceremony was relatively small compared to the massive celebrity weddings that often dominate Hollywood headlines. First, they held a private civil ceremony in Los Angeles. Shortly afterward, they celebrated again with a gathering on Depp's private island in the Bahamas, a quiet and beautiful place surrounded by turquoise waters and tropical landscapes. For Depp, the island had always been a sanctuary. It was a place where he could escape the noise of Hollywood and reconnect with the simple joys of life. The wedding seemed like the beginning of a new chapter. But behind the scenes, their relationship was already becoming increasingly turbulent. Many relationships face disagreements and emotional struggles, but in this case, the conflicts between Depp and Heard reportedly grew more intense over time. Arguments became more frequent. Friends and observers later described the relationship as passionate but unstable. Within just over a year of marriage, everything changed. In May 2016, Amber Heard filed for divorce. The announcement alone would have been major news in Hollywood. But what followed next transformed the situation into a global media storm. Shortly after filing for divorce, Heard publicly accused Johnny Depp of domestic abuse. Photographs showing injuries appeared in the media. Court documents described alleged incidents inside their home. The story exploded across news networks, social media platforms, and newspapers worldwide. Within hours, the narrative surrounding Johnny Depp's life began to shift dramatically. For years, he had been admired as a creative artist and beloved performer. Now his name was appearing in headlines connected to accusations of violence. The public reaction was immediate and intense. Some fans defended him passionately, believing the accusations might not represent the full story. Others condemned him quickly, convinced that the allegations revealed a darker side of the actor. In the modern era of social media, public judgment can spread with astonishing speed. Opinions formed rapidly, often before legal investigations had fully unfolded. For Depp, the experience was deeply painful. He denied the allegations and insisted that he had never abused Heard. According to his statements, the accusations misrepresented the reality of their relationship. But defending oneself against such claims is never simple, especially when the entire world is watching. Meanwhile, Hollywood studios were closely observing the situation. In an industry where reputation can influence billions of dollars in investment, controversy often makes studios nervous. The future of Depp's film project suddenly became uncertain. By August 2016, Depp and Heard reached a divorce settlement. Their marriage had lasted only 15 months. The divorce agreement included a financial settlement of $7 million, which Heard announced she planned to donate to charity. At the time, both parties released a joint statement suggesting that their relationship had been intensely passionate and sometimes volatile. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the situation might finally calm down. But the conflict between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard was far from over. In the years that followed, a series of lawsuits, counterclaims, recordings, and testimonies would gradually turn their personal dispute into one of the most widely discussed legal battles in modern celebrity history. Courtrooms, legal documents, and televised trials would soon replace movie premieres and red carpets, and the world would watch every moment. For Johnny Depp, the years ahead would test not only his career, but also his emotional resilience in ways he had never experienced before, because the controversy that had begun with a divorce was about to grow into something much larger, a public courtroom drama that millions of people around the world would follow with intense fascination. After the divorce in 2016, many people expected the conflict between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard to fade quietly into the past. Hollywood relationships often end with emotional headlines that eventually disappear as news stories capture public attention. But this situation was different. Instead of fading away, the controversy grew larger. In December 2018, Amber Heard wrote an opinion article for The Washington Post. In that article, she described herself as a public figure representing domestic abuse. Although Johnny Depp's name was not directly mentioned in the piece, the connection was obvious to readers around the world. For Depp, the article felt like a devastating blow. By that time, the accusations from 2016 had already damaged his reputation.